This is the gearbox to my G&P Viper, and I just wanted to show the upgrades that I'm going to do. Yeah, I guess I'll just start at the beginning. This is an HC nozzle, air nozzle. It's replacing the stock G&P. The stock G&P wasn't bad. It was it did have an O-ring, but it was cut kind of like coarse, not so smooth. So and this HC is a lot smoother, so I'm gonna go with that. This cylinder head is from another gun. It's not a fancy S&H or something like that. I put an S&H cylinder head in my tank, but there's a problem with the fitment because these plugs here on the G&P gearbox are bigger than this hole, and if you want to use well, for the SHS cylinder head, I had to do some drilling, and you know, it's about 10-15 minutes of drilling, so I think I was just gonna go with this head this time because it fit perfect in those holes. The cylinder is stock G&P. Stock G&P one is actually non-ported, and you know, I'm kind of surprised about that because that's a lot of air volume, and the Viper is kind of a CQB length gun. I think the barrel is somewhere around 299 millimeters, rather than, you know, the carbine is 363. But anyway, they chose it, and the only other cylinders I have are the ported M4 ones. I'm gonna see what you know, a full non-ported cylinder is gonna do with the FPS. I've gone with this SHS piston. This is the 15 tooth type, and I corrected it for angle of engagement. As you can see, I took off the first tooth after the pickup tooth, and about a third of the second tooth, just to help with that. And I did just a, you know, moderate Swiss cheesing. I used a Dremel, and yeah, I'm not sure. You know, I didn't want to go crazy with it because it's actually I've only been modifying my gearboxes for a little while, so I'm basically just still learning. By the way, I put a 70D sorbopad, and it was 3/16 of an inch, and I also put a neoprene protector pad on top of the sorbopad. So it did. So you can see. Let's get the angle of engagement. Okay, compressed. And it's a nice, like, 1230. So that's okay for me. This gear set is by Super Shooter, which is supposedly SHS's like elite line or upper level. And if you notice, well, first of all, the axle is not here. It's in this part of the gearbox. So that's one of the first of all, that's one of the unique things about it. The axles are separate from on the sector gear and the spur gear. And what you'll notice is it has its own set of bearings here, and also on the spur gear, it has its own set of bearings. And I'm using these. I'm assuming it's going to reduce the friction even more. You know, if it were only using the gearbox's bearings, that's a, you know, a bearing on each side to reduce the friction. But now you have 4 sets of bearings, or 4 pieces of bearings to reduce the friction for the sector and the spur gear. And if you notice, this delay chip is actually a bearing. And I think that's brilliant because it's going to reduce the friction of what would otherwise be, you know, a delay chip rubbing on the tappet plate. So here, that's the spur gear, you know, and I just greased it up a lot. The bevel gear is interesting. It looks like it's made out of brass, and yeah, basically a little bit unique about it. I put some grease there, as you can see. The anti-reverse latch. This is an SHS one. The stock G&P one was kind of bulky, and actually the stock G&P gears, the bevel gear only had 2 catches on it, whereas this one, you know, they might other bevel gears will have like 6 catches on it or something, but here is the stock G&P anti-reverse latch, really goopy with, I don't know, this thick paste of grease and kind of chunky, so I replaced it. But I did use the original anti-release lever spring because it's very soft, and I replaced it with the SHS, and it was so hard, it was actually pushing the anti-release lever up against the bevel gear hard enough that it was actually wearing down the anti-reverse lever. It was being pushed against the metal of the bevel gear so hard that it was grinding. So that's one of the things you might want to check. I replaced it with a, you know, the G&P stock spring, so it's much softer. And actually, I think that affected the rate of fire, because when I was hand turning it, I could feel that, you know, there was actually some resistance from the friction. So anyway, well, yeah, that's what it's looking like so far. I'm gonna go ahead and use the spring, this spring holder. I'm forgetting what it's called, but the reason for that is the G&P gearbox has a very tight slot here, and like it can only fit this pin, this size pin, and the G&P gearbox has very tight tolerances here, so you know, only something as narrow as this pin will fit in there, as you can see. And you know, I have this nice fancy spring guide with bearings and all, and you know, nice anodizing, but you know, as you can see, it won't fit. The tabs are too wide for the gearbox. You can make it fit with dremeling and all, but you know, I used the stock one in my tank gearbox, and it was fine. You know, it doesn't have the bearing, but that's okay because the piston head will have a bearing anyway. One of the things I forgot to mention was that I did short stroke these gears. They're 13-to-1 gears, and I short stroked them by 2 teeth. And you know, I took the last 2 teeth off this piston. I didn't really want to take more off because you'll lose FPS per tooth. I read somewhere like 25 feet per second, or 28 even. Somebody I saw on YouTube, somebody said 28 feet per second per tooth. So I didn't want to lose too much. So I only took off 2 teeth. Hopefully I'll get the benefit of, you know, slight increase in rate of fire. But anyway, to compensate for the loss of FPS, I'm going to use a 130 spring to try and get FPS back. And but since I was going for like 13.1, you know, high rate of fire, you run the risk of pre-engagement, so that's another reason why, you know, you need to short stroke. And I'm getting a Lonix motor. It's coming in maybe Monday, something like that. So I'm going to run, it's a high torque motor. I'm going to run it with this set. And then, you know, I'll let you guys hear what it's like. So basically, this is the gearbox for my G&P Viper, and yeah, hopefully it'll be somewhat badass. And by the way, props to Brillarmory and Clandestine for a lot of the internals, the piston, air nozzle, spring, things like that. The gears I got from eBay. But anyway, props to those two companies. Give them a look if you're rebuilding gearboxes. I can highly recommend them. You'll save a lot of money. Alright guys, good luck shooting.